II is known for being one of the most gruesome and bloody wars in history, with an overall death toll between 75 and 80 million people. One of its most horrific events, the Holocaust, was the systematic genocide of over 6 million Jewish people. It destroyed people, shattered families, broke communities, and toppled entire countries. Such an act of malice and hate had never been paralleled beforehand and hasn't since. But from this sprouts the question, how was Germany going to repair and bring justice to their people and other countries once they were stopped, and to what extent would they be successful? The year is 1942. World War II, one of the most brutal conflicts in human history, is at its peak. It is being fought between America, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union as leaders of the Allied powers, and Nazi Germany, Italy, and Japan as the leaders of the Axis powers. The war introduced new battle doctrines, increased manufacturing capabilities, but most of all, terrible and inhumane war crimes. The atrocities ordered by Hitler and his advisors led to the deaths of over 11 million people, 6 million of them Jewish, becoming the most atrocious and vile act of hate in history, the Holocaust. Over its course, people were harmed and irreparably broken in far too many ways. They were loaded onto train cars with barely enough room to breathe, put in concentration camps, set to work in icy cold conditions, forced to march day in and day out across Europe, and perhaps most infamously, subject to death inside gas chambers and incineration. Yet, even more brutal and terrible was the Nazis' experiments that they would run on their prisoners, such as intentionally giving hypothermia to their victims, only to attempt to warm them back up again. But on April 30th, 1945, as the Allies and their forces closed in on Berlin, a round was fired. Hitler had committed suicide. Yet, as much as this meant victory for the Allies, it didn't fix the wrongs done by the Nazis and the Axis powers as a whole. Thus entered the post-war era and began the reparations and reconstruction. But as the Nazi Party fell, Germany was left without any semblance of a government, leaving control completely to the Allies. Thus, Germany was split four ways, between the Soviet Union, United States of America, United Kingdom, and France. The western two-thirds belonged to the United Kingdom, United States of America, and France, and later became known as Western Germany. Due to their Western connections, they were held responsible for some events of the Holocaust and many other things done by the Third Reich. This led to the reparations and compensation accomplished by Western Germany in the wake of World War II in attempts to correct their misdeeds. Pushed by the Allies, Western Germany is forced to take responsibility and blame for the Nazis and their wrongdoings. But with how devastating the reign of the Third Reich was, it wasn't going to be easy. Many ideas were considered, proposing financial compensation, settling events in a court of law, and even publicly executing Nazi officers. One of the many ways Western Germany aimed to correct their wrongs was the Luxembourg Agreement. The Luxembourg Agreement was ratified in an attempt to financially compensate the Jewish people for both the physical damages done to them and their property, but also in an attempt to apologize for the psychological damage inflicted by the Nazi reign of terror. The agreement detailed plans for payment to Israel in excess of 3.45 billion Deutschmark, or around $750 million US today. But as much as money is valuable, it could still never fill the voids of loss and sadness felt by survivors of the Holocaust. Yet more personally important to those who had suffered at the hands of the Nazis was justice. This movement was driven not only by government policies, but also by the actions of its people. A key example of this was the role of educators and the public education system in addressing the nation's dark past. Many teachers integrated lessons on the Holocaust into their curricula, presenting the atrocities committed during the Nazi era in an honest and unflinching manner. These efforts aimed to raise awareness among younger generations about the dangers of totalitarianism, racism, and hatred, fostering critical thinking and a sense of moral responsibility. By confronting history openly, educators helped to break cycles of denial and ignorance, encouraging students to reflect on the past and work towards building a just and democratic society. This initiative not only reshaped cultural and societal attitudes, but also became an important part of Western Germany's recovery, ensuring the horrors of the Holocaust were never forgotten. While Western Germany made significant strides in restoring the rights of oppressed groups, sometimes things didn't go according to plan. For example, one man named Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, in a bid to stabilize the nation, placed former Nazis in key government roles, hoping they would reform. However, this idea had clear flaws, leading to people such as Hans Globk, a former Nazi legal advisor, now Adenauer's chief of staff, who shaped policies that would undermine denazification. For instance, the amnesty laws of the early 1950s, supported by Globk, reduced penalties for former Nazis and allowed their reintegration into society. This approach prioritized reconciliation over justice, slowing the progress of denazification and leaving unresolved tensions in pursuit of accountability. These examples demonstrate the overall success of their attempts at rehabilitation, and though at most points they were successful, at others they weren't. Building on the mixed successes and failures of Germany's post-war reparations and justice efforts, the short and long-term impacts of these actions reveal the complexities of rebuilding a nation after such immense atrocities. In the short term, Western Germany faced economic and societal strain as they struggled with their Nazi past. Reparations under the Luxembourg Agreement burdened Western Germany's struggling economy, while simultaneously society was divided over the fairness of these payments, with some Germans resenting the blame and reforms they were subject to. On the other hand, these reforms also came with some positive short-term effects, such as a more positive society and quick help for those who had survived the Holocaust, and other short-term reforms that created a more peaceful nation. In the longer term, these efforts managed to lay out a way for future generations to reshape Western Germany's identity. Education about the Holocaust became a method of societal reform, as schools integrated lessons on Nazi atrocities to foster awareness and prevent future hate. This open confrontation with history helped instill a commitment to democracy and human rights in younger generations. Additionally, initiatives to memorialize victims and acknowledge wrongdoing created space for national reflection, though tensions persisted between those embracing accountability and those resistant to change. Over time, Western Germany's willingness to address its past, coupled with cultural shifts towards tolerance and inclusivity, transformed it into a global advocate for peace and justice. Despite lingering distrust and unresolved tensions, these social changes were critical to healing divisions and fostering reconciliation on both a national and international level. The aftermath of World War II left Western Germany with an unparalleled challenge, reconciling the horrors of the Nazi regime while striving to rebuild a shattered nation. Through reparations such as the Luxembourg Agreement, educational reforms, and efforts to memorialize victims, Germany took significant steps towards acknowledging and addressing its dark past. These initiatives were not without flaws. Economic burdens, societal tensions, and the controversial reintegration of former Nazis slowed progress. Yet, these efforts laid the foundation for long-term transformation, fostering a culture of accountability, tolerance, and human rights advocacy. While the pain and loss caused by the Holocaust could never truly be rectified, Germany's willingness to confront its past and take responsibility served as a powerful example of the complexities of post-conflict justice. The nation's journey underscores that rebuilding after immense atrocities is a process marked by both successes and failures, but one that ultimately enables growth, healing, and a renewed commitment to ensuring that history doesn't repeat itself. Through these actions, Western Germany transitioned from a symbol of oppression to a global advocate for peace and reconciliation, proving that even from the darkest chapters of history, lessons can emerge to guide future generations towards a brighter path.